And we really appreciate taking time out of your day to join us to talk about innovation in the time of COVID. We're excited that you're here. A couple of housekeeping things is that we will be recording this and making the, we'll send out by email the recording. And if you have questions, we like questions. Please put questions and answers in the Q&A section or in the chat, and we'll answer them. So, and then I'm really excited to have today Love Telsidas, our founder and CEO of Techolution. He is a visionary and a problem solver, and you'll hear about some of the projects that Techolution has done. We also have Craig Morrisroe with us. He has 30 years financial service experience, and Tim Delesio, who is our CTO at Techolution, and he'll be talking about the architectural aspects, the technical side. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Love.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for joining, everybody. So today I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the digital transformation, innovation that we're seeing as a global consulting company, Techolution, working with customers. So some facts and a lot of practical anecdotes that hopefully you can apply in your own lives and your own companies to bring value. So a little bit about Techolution. We are still a startup. About 5.5 years ago, we started after I had a long career in the corporate world, very successful, building very large and very successful digital systems. So we're headquartered here in New York. Most of our customers are in the United States, but we also have a very strong presence in Southeast Asia. We have a rapidly building customer base. We have offices in a few other places like India and so on. So with that said, Tim, next slide, please. So I'd like to tell you a little bit more about our areas of expertise. And we talk about next-gen digital transformation. We're actually helping our customers starting with strategy. You know, how do you take a business idea, or how do you take a traditional brick and mortar business that's been pretty successful and turn it into this wow digital customer experience so you can be very successful doing business digitally? And it's not always a one-to-one translation, right? What works in brick and mortar doesn't always work exactly in the digital world. So we help customers with that journey, building applications, outsource development, and a big part of the bottleneck that we see right now is with cloud. A lot of our customers are running on legacy systems, and they can't just start from scratch. Some of them do, but many of them don't have the privilege of doing that because they're already successful businesses. So we have a whole practice around cloud transformation, and there are different ways that we engage with customers to help them build up that infrastructure so they can start accelerating digitally. Additionally, with building on top of this cloud transformation, we, especially now with everybody working remotely and trying to be offsite, Internet of Things is one of those practices that we've seen has become very, very valuable for customers, where you can manage your assets remotely through our Internet of Things practice and platform. And last but not least, you know, with more and more data coming into your business, coming into your systems, analytics doesn't cut it anymore, right? Because it's like too much noise, paralysis by over-analysis. This is where AI really changes the game and helps you see clearly ahead and be proactive. So these are the things that we do and help customers with on a day-to-day basis here. And that is the perspective that I'm going to take as I share some of these success stories and some of these trends with you. Next slide, Tim. Craig, this one's for you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Craig Morrisroe, and as Love had alluded to and Connie had mentioned, I come from a very strong transformation background. I've been running transformations for the last 20 years. So, but what we're here today to do is talk about, obviously, COVID-19. So the big question that we get asked is, how bad was COVID-19? Because we're still in the middle of it. The simple answer to that question is, from an economic perspective, the word is devastating, disaster, whatever you want to call it. The United States economy, which is a $20 trillion economy, lost between $3 to $4 trillion worth of gross domestic product in the last 3 months, which is staggering. The last time we lost something anywhere near that size was during the Great Depression, 1930s. So to say that this is a bad situation would be an understatement. Unemployment soared. We were at 3.7% before COVID hit, and now it peaked at 15% of unemployment. And in the U.S. economy, we're lucky if we're still back between 11 and 12%. A lot of the processing of unemployment is still not known. And then, of course, the biggest thing we're seeing, and this is one that everyone sees when they drive down the road, is that because of COVID, because of the quarantining, because of the shutting down of businesses, traditional brick and mortar businesses just got clobbered during this. And in fact, many of those businesses are closed now. And there are many companies that may never reopen again. And then the last thing that's happened during COVID, which is I think also startling, and maybe people aren't aware of this, is the fact that as more business moves digitally and as more business is done online, we've seen a massive skyrocketing of cyber crimes. In other words, phishing incidents, ransom instances. A big area that they're going after is stealing credit cards, obviously in the financial services business. But this has gone up massively, fivefold just since COVID began. Now, what we're going to do today is, as alluded to, is we're going to talk about companies that not all companies went through some bad times during this. In fact, the companies that had a strong digital presence, they actually were quite successful. We're going to go through some use cases today and kind of show you which companies those were and how they performed. But that gives us a macro level, a very high level macro level from an economic perspective. What I'd love to do is to kind of tell you, to get more detail on kind of the more ground level. He's much more on the day-to-day operations with mid-sized and small-sized companies, even large-sized companies too. But he can give you a little more perspective of what he's seeing in the economy. So if you would, love, please.
Sure. Thank you. Tim, next slide, please. So as this situation still unfolds, if anybody tells you the pandemic is over or they know what's going to happen in the fall of 2020, then just don't listen to them. They're lying. Nobody really knows, right? We can all predict. The reality is the situation is still unfolding. But also, let's take a moment and recognize that this is a uncharted territory, and this is a problem of a size that probably is going to be once in a lifetime for many of us. Starting with the pandemic, and then you've got civil unrest, especially here in the United States. You've got a very uncertain economic future that depends a lot on what happens with the pandemic. But also, we're seeing a major shift in how people socially interact with each other, how they, from everything, how they go shopping, how they, get together, how we're getting together. For example, here, this could have easily been at an event, a live event, right? Now everything's online. That's a major shift. And also the big one that a few players are taking a stab at is climate crisis, right? So we've got a whole set of very larger than life challenges in front of us. But the good news is there are some opportunities, major opportunities, if you know where to look for it, and you can see through all that fog. And some companies, we're seeing some winners. We're also seeing some losers, and we're seeing some in the middle who are shifting from being reactive to being more proactive. So there are major opportunities, is what I'm trying to tell you, for major disruption, but also for things to digitize, right? Because it took a little bit longer than what a lot of us thought, especially watching sci-fi movies and shows in the 70s and 80s. 2020 was going to be the year where things were going to be very different. We're not quite there yet, but this might be an event that accelerates that. And I want to tell you that, if you're aligned to dream big, do bold, and most importantly, forget about what we learned in the last 2 decades of failing fast and failing often. That was great coming from a era of waterfall software development, waterfall product development. But what we really need to drop that and replace it with the succeed faster and winning often methodology. Because the funds are limited and speed to market is extremely important. So we can't afford to fail fast and fail often. But yet these changes in the actions that you take, especially as digital leaders, is going to determine what the world looks like. So with that said, next slide here. So, I would categorize the companies, the businesses that we're seeing adapt to this transformation. And in many ways, it's a digital transformation. With social distancing, people are being forced to do more things digitally in 4 different categories. One of them are the companies, the businesses who were already at the forefront of digital transformation, right? Either disruptive competition was pushing them to do it, or they were just, visionaries and big companies who got ahead of it and were investing heavily. And some of them did very well, as we will see in the next slide when we look at some winners and survivors in different industries. And what we're seeing them do is take a pause and say, is this working out in a post-COVID-19 world? Yes, let's accelerate. Let's invest more in the digital initiatives that are working out. And let's perhaps drop the ones that are not working and invest them in new opportunities. And they're doing great, fantastic. The next category are companies who were, dabbling with digital transformation, getting their feet wet, weren't sure. And I'll tell you, some of them had to move full speed ahead very rapidly, and we very successfully helped many of them. And that's the only way they were able to continue generating revenue while their brick and mortar part of the business were forced to shut down. And that's a great story there, the speed and time to market. The third one are companies who really sat on the sideline until it got so painful, and now they're saying, we need help. We need to digitize. It's time that we build our digital presence, and good for them, because it's not too late. It's not too late, because I think these shift in trends, whether the pandemic lasts for a long time, some people think a year or 2 years, or it just be a shift in consumer behavior as a result of what's happened, it's not too late. And then the fourth category are the ones that just have given up. Right? They just don't want to go through that transformation. And what I say to them is good luck, right? Next slide. So if we were to look at, some of the success stories across industries, as you see in banking, these are companies that we've worked with and we've helped them with their digital transformation. The best one is JP Chase, right? They've been a digital leader for a long time, and they've got some of the best digital experiences. And interestingly, the last quarter, they declared, a surprising, very profitable earning, while a lot of their big competitors lost money. And similar story with some of these others. And you've got some mid-sized companies who are also doing pretty well, while others are not. And then in retail, this is one of my favorite stories. So we've been helping J.Crew with their digital transformation for years now, building up their e-com direct-to-consumer brand sales. And many of you know they went through a transformation, many different, very hard times, and the only thing that kept them alive is because their brick and mortars across pretty much most of the malls in America had zero revenue. And the only thing that survived was the e-com, and that is going to help them through this restructuring that they're going through. And in fact, they are investing even more in their e-commerce now, because that's the only way they're making money. And that's a great story. And I could tell you so many examples of customers that we've talked to, we've helped through this pandemic, and their digital transformation and helping them scale it very rapidly is what's kept them alive. In life science, I would say, of course, the big disruption has been with vaccine development, but also there's one that's emerged pretty strong, which is telemedicine. And telemedicine, regardless of what happens, is here to stay. And that can tell you a little bit more about what we've been doing there and how customers have benefited from that. And I'm going to jump straight to the out of luck industries, right? It didn't matter what you did and did not do. If you're in travel, you're in real estate, you're in event management, you're just out of luck. But watch out for those industries, because when an industry that, is fundamentally still strong, eventually people will still travel, they're still going to have some form of office buildings and whatnot. But these are areas for major innovation. So watch out for those, and they're going to emerge back stronger eventually. But it may be a long road for them. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Craig for the next segment.
Thanks, Lev. So as we said earlier at the beginning of this, we're going to go through some use cases, specific industries that we saw that had some, that came through COVID actually quite successfully. And the big players in some of these industries were leaders in digital transformations. So let's get started. And the first industry we want to take a look at is retail. So retail got absolutely clobbered. The retail industry has basically $5 trillion that it generates each year. During COVID, it lost 40%. Once again, this got to the stuff we talked about earlier. Most of the retail brick and mortar were shut down, and many of those businesses still have not opened. And any of those companies that didn't have a digital presence are feeling the pressure, as Love had mentioned to you. But obviously, the ones that did the investment, put in tremendous investments into digital, they performed outstandingly during COVID. Example, Walmart, Amazon, and Target. These companies all did exceptionally well. I mean, Amazon alone jumped 20% over that time period. So once again, digital, as Love had mentioned, digital online servicing of providing of products and services is not only is it going to continue to grow, but it's here to stay. I think one statistic that's very interesting that I saw the other day was that they actually did a prediction that 91%, that means over 300 million people in the United States, would be doing online purchasing by the year 2023. COVID moved up that timeline substantially. In fact, it's at close to 72% just in the last 2 months. So once again, Love alluded to this in the very beginning. This COVID thing is changing the markets and changing the transformation. And the companies that have digital storefronts, that have mobile applications, and have integrated systems to the back end using cloud computing and integrating that into their supply chain management, which are the major things that are occurring in the retail industry, these people are really profiting from COVID. I'd like to stop there, and remember that's some high level stuff, but I'd like also Love to kind of explain what he's experienced with some specific companies in this area. So Love.
Yeah, and that's something very interesting that we've observed. It's not just the millennials who are buying online or banking online. Now, as a result of COVID, everybody knows somebody's parents who are now buying online, banking online, or grandparents for that matter. It's just because they don't have a choice anymore, right? That's the safest way to do business. And what's interesting in retail is, at some point about five years ago or so, we saw a lot of retail brands who not only were contract manufacturing. If you're contract manufacturing your white label product, absolutely, right? There's no need to have your own digital presence and sell directly through your e-com to customers. You just go straight to Amazon and they take care of everything for you. Walmart, some of these large platforms to sell. But a lot of large brands got burned doing that, right? So what they realize is that you need to have your own version of a digital storefront. If you're J. Crew, or for that matter, Mood Fabrics, one of our customers that sells fabrics, and they're very popular. They're on Project Runway, they're a mid-sized business, and they had a brick and mortar plus online. But they sell direct to consumer, and you build a brand, people come directly to you. And at the same time, you're controlling that experience. You obviously are more profitable, but also you're keeping away the potential for the big ones turning on you and competing against you. So that's been very, very important. And we've helped several customers build their own brand, build their own e-com, so that they can sell directly to consumers. And I will tell you without a shadow of doubt, many of them who are not 100% digital have only survived, and some of them thrived, because of their e-com, because brick and mortar was completely shut down. And now we are seeing also a lot of brick and mortar businesses who are saying, hey, we need a digital presence. We don't want to go out of business. And that's really the silver lining, of this. And I believe, contrary to what a lot of people think, is it's not that Amazon, Walmart, and Target are just going to get bigger and take over everything. You're going to see a lot of Main Street retailers now have their own digital presence and serve customers really well in ways that those big companies cannot do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim to show you a little bit how it's done.
Well, thank you very much, Love. So I am the CTO here at Techolution. I run our cloud practice, and I'm here to talk about a little bit more technical for you guys. So I'm your resident techie that's on the scene here. So first, I want to talk about the three main challenges that this architecture solves, and that is the ability to scale when traffic starts to spike. Especially in retail, you have email campaigns and events that go out, and you get a large amount of traffic all at once. And then you have events like Black Friday and more international events that are other days. But essentially, you get a giant surge of traffic. So we need to be able to handle that. We need to be able to customize the user experience so that we can, recommend products back to them. If we're not getting that face-to-face interaction, we need to have a way to know our customers, give a customer a unique experience. And then finally, we need to be able to integrate with our downstream systems. When orders go through and when orders happen, we need to be able to fulfill them, ship them, track them, make sure everything is going on. So this architecture essentially solves all those problems for you, as well as one of the greatest advantages, all open source. So all this stuff is essentially free to run. As long as you have a cloud environment to run it in, you can use all this stuff. So just to kind of walk you through some of the flow here, since this is retail, you will get a good distribution of users that are using your mobile and your desktop. And if you didn't know, the average page load on the internet is around 3.21 seconds. So anything over 5 seconds, you start to get a bounce rate that increases all the way up to 90%. So, customers are really, especially in the retail space, less tolerant for slow pages. So specifically here, we have a varnish, which is a full page cache that sits in front of everything that serves the traffic, instantaneously when they hit it. These then, if you go from left to right here, we have an Nginx proxy that serves all of our static content. So anything that is, your HTML pages, your JavaScript, all that fun stuff gets served through there. And then behind that, we have a commerce platform, which is, in this example, Magento, but there are other ones that are just like that. This manages your catalog and your cart and other things that go into it. This is really, dependent on database. So we have a caching layer in there as well to speed up all this interaction. And then at the bottom, we have our CI/CD pipelines that all run in the same application. And then finally, we link everything with Kafka. So we can listen into messages when transactions happen or different events. We can stream these real time back to our downstream systems, as well as to our data lakes to help go out and make recommendations for our customers and get to really know them. So with this architecture, we're able to create a scalable, a resilient, a secure, and an affordable environment that we can use to really generate and increase our traffic. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Craig to talk about financial services.
Thanks, Tim. So now we're in my area of expertise. So financial services plays a very vital role during COVID. And in fact, two of the big functions it provides is it provides products and services to individual customers, usually in the form of some sort of monetary product. The fact that obviously people go through rough times and they need to borrow money and things like that. But also the banks provide also a very important infusion of funding or capital into companies as well during COVID. And as Love alluded to previously, certain companies that invested heavily into digital did quite well during this pandemic. However, the financial services companies that didn't build out their digital presence, they got hurt very bad. And the reason they got hurt very bad is because banks rely heavily on their branch systems to provide products and services to their customers. When the branches are not open and they're unable to meet face-to-face and providing products and services, that's very difficult for them to conduct business. So during this pandemic, a lot of the mid-sized or large companies that didn't invest in these digital transformations, they actually got hurt pretty severely. However, there is a set of companies that did exceptionally well during this time period, and those companies are the fintechs. The fintechs have been gaining market share in the financial services industry over the last decade. And boy, did they take advantage of the situation with COVID. And what a fintech is simply this. It's a financial services company that runs on digital platforms, uses cloud computing, and basically is using next-gen technology, open source technology, similar to what Tim was saying, to basically run their businesses. And they have the ability to sell their products and services, once again, through mobile devices, digital storefronts and all that kind of stuff. And what they're also doing is they're using techniques that were used in the retail industry to gain business intelligence on their consumers. And they're obviously being very proactive in marketing their solutions. So the financial services industry is using all types of technology. They're using blockchain, they're using distributed computing, they're using artificial intelligence, and they're using end-to-end integration, in which Tim will get more into the architecture of what the banks are using. But Love, can you kind of walk us through? I mean, you've done quite a bit of business in the financial services industry. Can you tell me what you're seeing on this as well?
Yeah. So just a personal story. Shockingly, I tried to go to a branch of a couple of banks that I do business with, since COVID, and you just can't get in. They're closed. Branches are just not open, and the only way to do business is digitally or the drive-through, which is interesting. Some of them have completely closed out their branches. So the story here is that, again, as a result of COVID, banks are now moving a lot of their operations to digital, if they weren't doing that already. Some who were prepared for this because they invested early did very well. Others are getting started, and it's still not too late, is what I would say. And we're also seeing, outside of traditional banking, financial services, mortgage companies who are coming to us saying, hey, can you please help us digitize? Because there are two aspects of it, right? You got to digitize that experience with the customer. So there's minimal need for physical interaction, but also on the back end, your team, right? The paperwork and so on and so forth. A lot of that now needs to be digitized so people can work from home and do everything remotely. So we've been very involved with, a few years back, we were privileged to help some of the largest banks in the world, such as JP Morgan Chase, DBS, and in Southeast Asia, with their digital transformation. But now we're able to take a lot of those lessons learned and framework and best practices and bring them to mid-size and smaller banks at a much more cost-effective pricing and a much faster time to market, because we've learned a lot of what works, what doesn't work, and there's a lot of reusability. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tim, who's personally actually done some of the biggest banking transformation projects in the world, to show you the secret sauce a little bit.
Tim, you're mute.
Oh, thank you very much. That helps. You'll probably notice some similarities here that
it's also
that are also related to the retail space. Again, these are all open source tools, so we get to take advantage of that. They all use Kubernetes as the base platform, but finance provides its own unique set of business challenges that exist, and this architecture is more aligned to those business challenges. So the three main ones I've captured here are first is reducing the complexities and increasing your time to market. I mean, if fintechs are releasing weekly or daily or even quicker, sometimes almost instantaneous, and you're releasing quarterly or even worse than that, there's no way you're going to be able to compete. So you need to reduce your complexities and help speed up how quick you can get your business idea from inception all the way to production. You want to be able to get insights from your data to make proactive business decisions. If you're reacting to changing market conditions, there's no way you're going to be able to compete. And then finally, I really haven't met a bank that didn't rely on some sort of legacy, either legacy technical debt or legacy mainframe system. You need a way to integrate that into your modern cloud environment. So this architecture basically attacks those main principles here. So let's start again on the end user perspective. Again, in banking, you have a good distribution of desktop as well as mobile users. But here you're more in a microservice-based architecture. So you need to start implementing a UI and some other feature for your either mobile users, non-application, or as well as your desktop. This ties into some API gateway, which is very handy for sharing APIs with third parties and throttling traffic and really controlling what goes in and into and out of, as well as securing your system. We have a microservice-based logic layer in there, and that is really can grow as wide and deep as you need, that communicate with each other, all either asynchronous or synchronous. Typically in the banking industry, we see event sourcing is very popular. So every event that goes through there is in a form of an event. And in the traditional way, the data, the system of record is usually the mainframe. And if you have to traverse your entire network to get to that data, that is a very lengthy process. That's complicated. You're exposing a lot of risk. So in this particular architecture, we've actually created a Cassandra instance, which is a data at the edge. So it really speeds up the interaction with this system. So moving things closer to your end users instead of traversing it. We use Kafka for a publish and subscribe system, so anybody can listen to events. And this is a great way that we can start, collecting user data and then funneling it into a data lake to then run AI and ML against it to do predictive analytics on what we're trying to do with our data and what our customers are looking for. So, again, all of this architecture solves for your scalable, your resilient, your secure, and an affordable environment that almost any bank can implement. So I'm going to turn it back over to Craig and talk about our third use case, which is the quick service restaurants.
Thanks, Tim. So quick service restaurants. What we're talking about here is sometimes known as the fast food restaurant business. As we all know, during COVID, most of the restaurants, almost every restaurant in the country is closed down for face-to-face business. And what's interesting is, up until the 8 years before that, the traditional restaurant business where people went in and actually ate, that business grew by over 2 million restaurants. So that was growing probably double the pace of traditional quick service restaurant growth. However, when COVID hit, that obviously those fortunes reversed themselves quite quickly. And in fact, if you were a restaurant and you didn't have a digital presence, you pretty much shut your doors. And in fact, those restaurants that did have a menial, digital presence, obviously for them to be able to survive, they had to actually invest in and actually create a bigger digital presence. Now, the quick service restaurants, the fast food restaurants, for example, the big players in these industries spent fortunes. They saw this coming, and they spent a tremendous amount of money into technology, specifically digital platforms. So like companies like Domino's and companies like McDonald's, they put substantial investments into this. And in fact, they're using touchless-free ordering, and they have a fully integrated system from front end, from actual order processing all the way through to the delivery. And in fact, they were very easy for them to implement into other service delivery companies, such as DoorDash or any of these other delivery companies, they were able to integrate with them very easily through APIs and being able to provide products and services. So at the end of the day, the quick service industry, believe it or not, was able to gain market share during this time, and they still invest in this, and they truly believe that even when the restaurants do start opening back up, because of the convenience, because of the service, because of the speed of delivery, they still believe that they'll be able to maintain some of that growth. Now, Love, I know you've worked in this, you've worked with some companies in this space before. Can you kind of explain to what you're seeing in this?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, Craig, so there's been quite a few, fortunately, quite a few food delivery platforms out there. And I feel that if this pandemic happened, let's say 15 years ago, we would all be cooking at home all the time, forget about eating out, right? But for mid-sized to larger restaurants or restaurant chains, when you're doing this at scale, leveraging one of those platforms just doesn't make economic sense, because what you don't realize is that they take a big chunk of that sales. And also the experience is not necessarily consistent. So we've been helping some of the mid-sized to larger restaurants with their, for example, order ahead platforms, delivery platforms that they own, where there's an upfront investment, yes, but it's relatively cost effective when you start doing the math of what it would cost at scale. And there's been some really great success stories there. Those who've been able to get ahead and get their order ahead and delivery platform and manage that experience have done really, really well in spite of the shutdown. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Tim for the how segment.
Thanks, Love. So here's my last architecture. So you're probably seeing a pattern developing here. But again, we got open source architecture. We leverage Kubernetes a lot. But let me first start with the business challenges here, because they are unique to the quick service restaurant industry here. So they have a little bit more, very similar to retail. Scalability is really important. People all eat, or at least typically eat around the same times, lunchtime, dinner time. So you get a high influx of that traffic coming in all at once. So you need to be able to meet that customer demand and making sure your systems aren't down. I mean, if you're not taking orders, you're in trouble. So you need to be able to make sure you do that. You introduce that extra layer of, you can't order food in the mail and have it shipped to you, or you go hungry. So you need to have that extra layer of restaurant be able to pick up those messages. So those restaurants essentially turn into small little data centers, and they need to be part of your ecosystem to make sure they pick up the messages and fulfill them, and then send them back and communicate back with the main system to let them know what's going on. And then you need some sort of supply chain management to make sure that food is being reordered and all the different aspects of your whole supply chain are being met. So with that in mind, let's dive a little deeper into this architecture. Now on this side, the QSR side is really more mobile friendly. I mean, most of your orders are coming directly from mobile, and you start to see a lot less of that UI experience. So the API gateway becomes much more important. That's basically the central funnel where everything flows through. And then, like in the finance, we leverage microservices a lot. We need a decoupled environment. We may have a mix of synchronous and asynchronous communication between them, but the important thing is make sure everything is running separately, and we really decouple all the interactions between them. And we leverage a lot of NoSQL and SQL relational databases for different types of data. So we have a cache in front of it, making sure that everything is flowing nicely through the system and at a really quick speed. And just like in finance, we can leverage that theory of Kafka and subscription and publishing. We can have different stores or business insights link into those messages, and we can create a bi-directional communication between the stores and the mainframe systems, or the cloud, if you will, to make sure that the full end-to-end is covered in this entire process. And then, just like in all the other places, we want to make sure that we have some way that we can get insights into what our customers are doing, what they're ordering, what we can recommend, what we can upsell. And we do that through AI and ML with all the data that we process in the cloud. So again, this architecture is scalable, it's resilient, it's secure, and it's definitely affordable. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it back over to Love to talk about some of the innovation that we've done.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So we've had an innovation center and the whole culture of innovation here at Techolution in our labs across different regions. And post COVID-19, or right when it started happening, we went back and looked at all the different innovation initiatives that we were working on, and very quickly mapped that out to what would benefit this post-COVID-19 world the most, and did certain pivots. So we stopped it. We hit the pause button on a few of them, and then invested and accelerated a few of them. I want to share a couple of those that have really worked out pretty well for us. Tim, if you want to go to the next one. So this is an initiative that we were kind of getting our feet wet and playing around with in partnership with the Brooklyn Hospital here in New York, where we're connecting their ICU beds, the patients, getting all their vitals into the cloud, and then applying AI to that. Because in traditional ICU, when a patient goes into code, that's when the bells go off and the nurses and doctors run to attend to them. They see a 70% mortality rate. But in partnership with Brooklyn Hospital, we were trying this hypothesis that if we're able to get not just one vital, but all the vitals together in real time, apply AI and predict half hour to 45 minutes before a patient would go into code, and then alert the nurses and doctors to attend to them, we could significantly reduce the mortality rate. So that was kind of a fun, exciting project that just magnified when COVID happened, because now the hospital just did not have enough personnel to attend to the overcrowded ICU. So we accelerated this project, and it was extremely beneficial, along with several other digital initiatives that the Brooklyn Hospital was doing. And that's probably another deeper dive session where I can share the story a little bit further. Likewise, Tim, move to the next one. Prior to COVID-19, we've been in our labs, we've been developing this technology to enable touch-free door unlocking. And when COVID-19 happened, we were talking to people about this, and they said the unlocking piece is fantastic, but for it to be truly safe and hygienic, the whole experience needs to be touch-free. So we got to work even harder, and we not only invented the device that does the facial recognition and recognizes the person to unlock the door, but we went on to invent the bot. So Tim, if you want to play that video, that actually opens the door for you. So we're the first completely touch-free door opening technology in the world. And the vision of this product is to change the human experience with doors and locks forever. It's very exciting. In this case, we're working with a hotel to do a touch-free check-in process. So you can register remotely, part of your check-in message. No elevator buttons, it tells her where to go. There's no check-in lines. Walk straight to the room, recognizes the person, it unlocks, and watch the bot in the back opening and closing the door. So this has come to life very, very rapidly, and been motivated with what the world is looking for post COVID-19. Tim, next slide, please.
So I just want to talk a little bit some of the commonalities in all the architecture and all the different aspects I went over. And I think it's important just to basically notice and realize, what makes this so successful from the architecture perspective. And that's really first the platform. Making sure that you have a platform. That's can't stress that enough. I really focused on Kubernetes, as I believe it's the future. But there are other platforms out there as well, like Cloud Foundry and Docker Swarm and Service Mesh and things like that. But Kubernetes is really where I see a lot of companies going. And if you are going to go Kubernetes, I highly recommend you pick a managed Kubernetes. One of the ones that either the cloud providers do, or like an OpenShift or one of those, something that helps you run that environment, because it's rather difficult. But why is this important? Because that's really, good to know. And that really gives you a unified experience and visibility in your systems. And without that, you really don't know what's going on. You get, some rogue DevOps out there. They call it shadow ops, just spinning up environments everywhere, and your cost goes really out of control. It gives you some flexibility also to pick what vendor and what cloud provider you want to use. You want to try to avoid that cloud lock-in as much as possible. I mean, if you're locked in like to AWS, for instance, and they start to build out and really gouge you on prices, you need to be able to have enough flexibility to move to another vendor. So it's important to have this unified platform that you can actually go out. The second thing is the real-time data ingestion, processing, and automation. And all those pieces are super important. You can't really do AI without having then access to your data first. So you need to be able to get access to that data in a real-time manner, pipe it to the cloud, and being able to then process it. So become master of your data first. And tools like Kafka and Rabbit and NiFi, they help with that by giving you a scalable solution that you can actually use. I mean, just imagine how much data that actually is. And with AI and ML, the more data you have, the better it is. So you better have a system that you can actually go and access it. And then finally, I didn't really showcase on any of the slides, but security. I can't stress security enough. So we need to really make sure that our environments are secure. So here is just in kind of a word cloud of a lot of the different attacks that could actually happen to your system. And as more and more businesses move online, cyber crimes have skyrocketed. There's been a 5-fold increase in security attacks since COVID started. So, all this new blood, if you will, that is now online for hackers to take advantage of, they definitely are. And the number one thing they're looking for is credit cards. They're really trying to steal credit cards and go out and access that. And the credit card companies have realized this as well. And they have really started to crack down on their audits and checking to make sure all these companies are following the best guidelines and practices. And a lot of companies don't know this, but the credit card companies, if you don't meet the PCI requirements, can actually pull your credit card, the ability to transact online. I mean, that is crippling. And if it's really not a matter of when, it's really a matter of if. It's not a matter of if you're going to be attacked, it's a matter of when. Because it's all that information is out there. There's so many ways to get in, and hackers they really understand how to do this and how to get around it. And they're really the only way to do that is to protect in depth. I mean, security is all about just being able to depth and distance. Try to distance your systems as far away and protect each layer. So you need to protect all the way from your data all the way to the edge. And if you don't know how to do this, please, I beg you, go out and have your systems tested. The best way to figure out if you can protect yourself is to test them out. And that could either be the form of a penetration test or security assessment, or what we recently started doing, which I think is very unique, is we've been doing hacker assessments. So we'll actually treat your site like a hacker would, and we'll look for all the vulnerabilities, come up with a great list of things that we see are potential problems, give that back to you, and have you fix them. So if you don't go with us, that's fine, but please have somebody test your systems, because if not, the hackers win, they'll get access to your systems. And if you have a breach, most of the companies just cannot recover, from either the brand tarnishing or the financial impacts or, the fines, all these things at once just kill your company. So again, please have your system tested and lock it down. So with that, Love, bring us home. Take us away here.
Point well taken, Tim. Thank you. So what I would say in summary, while the future is very uncertain and very likely it's going to get harder before it gets better, we see potentially multiple waves of the pandemic, more shutdowns, more social distancing. The silver lining here, if you're in digital transformation, you're a technologist, is we're going to see an acceleration of digitization of businesses like we've never seen before. So if your business is lagging or you're thinking about it, don't even think about it, right? If it's the core of your business, if it's going to make you money or it's going to save you money, allow your workforce to work more efficiently, you must invest in digital transformation. And the good news is that it's not too late to start. It's not too late to accelerate, and learn from the battle scars of people like us. Right? We've been through it. We've helped the pioneers get into it first. So now we can help you, or people like us can help you make it happen faster and much, much more cost effectively, to be honest with you. Right? So that's the exciting part. But also, what really, really excites me is whenever you have a major world event like this, that also is basically the starting point of a major opportunity for innovations that are going to be talked about for the next 10 years, right? That's going to tap into the zeitgeist of this decade, which is going to be different from the last 2 decades, right? And we know the products that are on everybody's lips that really did a great job tapping in the zeitgeist. Now, this is a new opportunity, and your business may be there, your business may be the one, or your idea may be the one. So I encourage you, take your big dreams in whatever domain you're very familiar with, take bold steps. But what I can tell you, having helped many companies go through this, is stop with the old practices of the last decade, right? So a new decade, we need to follow a new way of doing things. Forget about failing fast, failing often. Think about how you can succeed faster, how you can win big. And there are many very simple techniques that will save you a lot of time, a lot of money, to position yourself before you get started, to help you simulate your ideas, test your ideas with your market, to succeed faster. And also, there is no need anymore to take risks with some of the core technology. There's a lot of great stuff out there. Not all of them are great, but some of them are fantastic. And with the help, with the right advice, you can accelerate that and do this a lot more cost effectively. So I'm very, very optimistic about the future, especially for all of you who are in the digital technology innovation business. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Connie for questions and answers.
Yes, and we have a couple of questions. Do any of you have questions about the business side of the challenges around COVID, around digital transformation, around the technical side? We have Tim here. And so I have a couple questions I'll start out with, but please put your questions in either the chat or the Q&A box. So the first question is, are digital platforms more affordable?
I guess I could take that one. I mean, they are totally affordable if they're implemented the correct way. All these open source tools out here are essentially free to use. I mean, as long as you know how to use them and implement them and deploy them, and as long as you take advantage of the cloud. If you do a lift and shift from your existing data center and just pick up an application as is and dump it in the cloud and expect to save money, I mean, you're probably not going to save much money. But if you leverage the cloud to its fullest ability and implement all these software open source technologies, you can definitely reduce your costs and actually just pay for what you use. I mean, that's the whole point of the cloud, and really what the selling point is if you're only using, if you're bursting up and using 80 servers during that burst, after the burst, you can shrink that down to 5. So that makes it very affordable.
The one thing I would add to what Tim said on that also, it's very important if you have a transformation strategy where you're moving to cloud computing, where we found it was incredibly cheaper to run, is it gives you the ability to run really rationalization programs on your technology. To Tim's point, lifting and shifting, just lifting crap up a little bit over and dropping it into the cloud isn't really the strategy. What you need to do is have an assessment done to look at what's able to be moved, and then rationalize and move away from technologies that don't support digitization and move to only technologies that do. That would be my recommendation. But go ahead.
Okay. The second question, are firms using ML and AI to fill the gap since businesses are unable to meet face-to-face with customers?
I'll take that. I think AI and ML is critical in this decade. The last couple of decades, you heard all about analytics and advanced analytics, which by default means that a human being has to sit there and look at charts and dashboards and then make decisions, right? Which was great. It worked for that era. In this era, where we have more things connected, our transactions, our social interactions, and now our things with Internet of Things being connected, that is a lot of data to analyze. And if you spend a lot of time depending on human analysis, then things are going to get missed and there's going to be paralysis. So AI really helps you, go through that data and learn and help you make decisions proactively, predictively. So I think it's critical, absolutely critical, that you start thinking and hopefully investing in doing AI. It's not as hard as people think. It's harder to learn the concepts, but once you get started, it's a lot of fun, actually.
I couldn't agree more with Love on that. The financial services industry, we're big users of ML and AI. To his point, the big thing ML and AI is going to do for you is going to reduce risk in your company. By having data within your company that you're using and leveraging and putting through modeling, you're getting very objective information. You're getting data-driven decisions, not opinions. There's a basis behind you making your decisions. And as long as the data quality is good, and obviously, as Tim said, you make sure you implement it properly, you're going to get ML and AI is here to stay. I agree with Love 100%, and it's going to be critical to be able to compete in the future. You're going to have to use ML and AI at some form or a level to react more quickly to market changes. I mean, the people that had ML and AI were the first ones to adjust to COVID. They were able to adjust to COVID within days to weeks. Whereas in many of the industries just got absolutely hammered. And before they knew it, they were in big trouble. So definitely, I agree with Love on that. ML and AI is here to stay.
Okay. And here's another question. And if anyone else has questions, please ask and we'll get them answered. So are you seeing cloud computing as a real game changer? And is it really cheaper than traditional compute environments?
So, I mean, I'll go back to my other answer. Yes, totally, if it's done right. It really depends on how you implement it. It's always the devil's in the details there. By using pure compute, it's going to be more expensive. But if you use like a Kubernetes-based systems or a managed service there, that's how you really start to shave down your costs. So, and having the flexibility and not being locked into a specific cloud vendor in case one of them does raise its prices or changes their services. Because I mean, what they don't really tell you is you put all your data there, you lock into their services, and then all of a sudden you just created this environment where you're stuck. They have you. If they would decide later that they're going to jack, double, triple your prices, you got to pay, or you have to pay to get migrated off. So by having that flexibility and being able to price shop a little, you can take advantage of that and really help reduce some of the costs in the computer.
All right. Thanks, Tim, and thank you, everybody. And so watch for our next webinar. They'll be coming next month. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.